Is someone sitting in that chair? I asked Sarah, my coworker, pointing to an empty workstation. She looked at me as if I had committed a heinous crime. Michael, we need to have a conversation about ableist microaggressions and discrimination against non-visible individuals. Sarah adjusted her badge, which displayed her pronouns, she, her, they, and her title as Corporate Social Justice Ambassador. That's Alex's desk, our new non-binary quantitative data analyst specializing in intersectional post-colonial perspectives. But there's no one there, I insisted, feeling a chill run down my spine as I saw a keyboard begin to type on its own. That kind of invalidating comment is exactly why we need more anti-bias training, Sarah sighed, pulling out her phone. I'm scheduling you for an emergency workshop on deconstructing compulsory visibility and physicality privilege. The keyboard kept typing, and now a vegan almond milk coffee cup was floating in mid-air. Sarah smiled at the empty space. Alex is working on our new quantum equity report. By the way, you had a 2-hour meeting with them this morning about molecular diversity metrics. I tried to recall the supposed meeting, but my mind was blank. On the board in the meeting room, someone or something had written in perfect handwriting, "Visibility is the new form of oppression." Incidentally, Sarah continued, Alex was just promoted to lead our new transdimensional inclusion initiative. Dr. Watson says they're the future of corporate diversity. Sarah lowered her voice to a whisper, though I find that problematic, as it implies a temporal hierarchy, marginalizing non-linear experiences of time. The monitor in front of me flickered, displaying a new email from alex.transcendental@diversitytech.com. Subject: Do you see me now? That's when I noticed my own hand, beginning to look slightly translucent. My name is Michael Chen, Financial Administrative Manager at Diversity Tech Solutions. As a first-generation Asian American, I've always been the perfect example of the company's diversity policies, or at least I was until 3 months ago, when Dr. Emily Watson arrived as our new Director of Radical Diversity and Inclusion. In her first presentation, wearing a blazer adorned with pronoun patches and a "Dismantle the Patriarchy" pin, she introduced alarming statistics about our lack of representation. Only 47% of our leadership comprises minorities, she exclaimed, horrified, and we have 0 representation from ghostly or spectral communities. The entire room erupted into applause when she vowed to achieve 100% representation at all hierarchical levels through her revolutionary quantum inclusion protocol. At the time, I found it odd that no one questioned how we would hire ghosts. But after 5 mandatory training sessions on material privilege and deconstructing systemic visibility, I learned to keep my mouth shut. The changes began with a complete office overhaul. They removed all reflective surfaces for being ableist against vampires, and installed dimensional access ramps for employees in different states of existence. The office coffee now included options for varied metabolic spectrums, including synthetic blood and ethereal plasma. Our tech team was forced to rewrite all the code, removing terms like master, slave, and blacklist, whitelist. The new inclusive code used an experimental programming language called C++++++, designed to be free from binary oppressive constructs. No one understood how it worked, but questioning it would be technophobic. Dr. Watson also implemented quotas that defied logic. We needed representation, not just of gender, race, and sexual orientation, but also of quantum states of consciousness and multidimensional perspectives. The legal department had a meltdown trying to adapt contracts to include clauses on transdimensional benefits and materialization leave. Meetings became surreal exercises in extreme inclusion. We had to leave empty chairs for non-corporeal colleagues and take 5-minute pauses to allow employees in different timelines to sync. The corporate calendar now included holidays from parallel dimensions and celebrations for awareness days for groups we didn't know existed. In my latest performance review, I was criticized for exhibiting materialist corporeal bias and privileging traditional audiovisual communication. My supervisor, whom now identified as a fluid social construct in a state of perpetual deconstruction, suggested I attend a reality unlearning retreat to improve my inclusive leadership skills. That's when I began to notice real, physical people disappearing, replaced by increasingly abstract concepts of identity. But no one seemed to notice or care. We were too busy celebrating our record-breaking diversity numbers and our new title as 2024's most transcendentally inclusive company, according to Fortune magazine. In the unisex multidimensional bathroom mirror, I noticed my own reflection starting to glitch. But before I could process it, I received an urgent phone notification. It was time for the mandatory workshop Dismantling Physical Supremacy, a guide to transcending toxic materiality. The changes began subtly, almost imperceptibly. First came the new memos about ultra-specific inclusive language. It was no longer enough to use neutral pronouns. Now we had to consider quantum pronouns and multidimensional identifiers. I remember the day Jenny from marketing was reprimanded for not using the correct pronoun for an employee who identified as cloud self. Amid the linguistic shifts, anomalies in the office became more frequent. Chairs moved on their own during meetings, coffee mugs floated mid-air, and documents were typed by invisible hands. The most unsettling part was how everyone acted as if it were perfectly normal. During a deconstructing visibility privilege workshop, Dr. Watson presented statistics showing our workforce was still oppressively visible. According to her, we needed to embrace non-visual forms of existence. To combat systemic visual centrism, emails became increasingly surreal. I received invites to networking lunches with non-corporeal entities and interdimensional mindfulness sessions. One particular memo stood out. Please respect designated spaces for employees in quantum superposition. Your observation may collapse their wave function identities. One afternoon, I found Sarah crying in the bathroom. She'd been accused of dimensional microaggression for attempting to sit in an apparently empty chair occupied, it turned out, by a collective of non-binary gaseous consciousnesses. HR mandated she complete a course on sensitivity to non-material existences. Mandatory training sessions multiplied, deconstructing material privilege, combating anti-spectral bias, recognizing your three-dimensional biases. During one of these sessions, I noticed some participants starting to turn translucent. One day, I stumbled upon a confidential document on the printer titled Project Transcendence, Final Phase of Corporate Inclusion. Dr. Watson's report detailed plans to transcend the physical limitations of diversity and embrace identities beyond the visible spectrum of existence. The charts were alarming. The more our spectral diversity increased, the more traditional employees disappeared. In the cafeteria, tables now bore signs like safe space for gaseous entities and exclusive area for diffuse consciousnesses. Those of us still physically present were increasingly pressured to question our material privilege and consider transitioning to non-corporeal states of existence. The IT department implemented a new communication system with telepathic frequencies and interdimensional channels. Our badges were updated to include fields for preferred state of matter and dimension of origin. The breaking point came when I discovered an encrypted file in the system. It revealed that each new invisible employee directly corresponded to the dimensional evolution of an existing one. We weren't hiring new staff, we were transforming real people into abstract concepts of diversity. When I tried sharing this with colleagues, I was immediately labeled dimension-phobic and a defender of material privilege. I was ordered to attend a 72-hour journey of existential bias acknowledgement. Hallways were now lined with motivational posters reading your body as a social construct and embrace your true non-Euclidean form. Occasionally, the walls shimmered as multidimensional affinity groups held meetings in spaces beyond three-dimensional comprehension. Each day, more colleagues evolved into non-corporeal states, celebrated with material liberation ceremonies, where their physical belongings were ritualistically recycled. The company began winning awards like Most Inclusive Workplace for all forms of existence and Pioneer in Transcendental Diversity. And then, I found the document that changed everything. The Corporate Dematerialization Manifesto, the true plan behind the Inclusion Department. At the quarterly all-hands meeting, the auditorium was strangely full, though I could see only half the people. Dr. Watson took the stage, her smile radiating a serene confidence that was deeply unsettling. The lights flickered as she began her presentation. "Welcome, everyone and every being." Her voice brimmed with almost manic enthusiasm. "I am thrilled to share our groundbreaking achievements this quarter." Slides flickered on the screen, each one more surreal than the last. "We've achieved 40% representation of non-corporeal entities, surpassing our 35% target. Let's give a round of applause for our invisible colleagues." Applause erupted, including claps from nowhere. 25% interdimensional beings, proving that diversity tech solutions transcends not just social barriers, but the laws of quantum physics. A distortion in the air seemed to nod in approval. 15% embodied abstract concepts, significant leap from last quarter's 5%. A vaguely human-shaped void stood to receive recognition. As the slides progressed, I noticed something chilling. Every increase in progressive categories directly correlated with a decline in traditional employees. The line representing conventional humans was plummeting. Dr. Watson's tone became almost messianic. Why limit ourselves to physical diversity? Why stop at race, gender, or disability when we can transcend material existence itself? I tried to stand and object, but something cold passed through me, a person I couldn't see. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the true nature of the program. We weren't hiring invisible employees. We were transforming real people into abstract ideas. Every employee who transitions to a non-corporeal state liberates themselves from the chains of existential privilege, Watson declared as more audience members began to fade. True allies understand that they must relinquish their physical existence to make space for more diverse forms of being. I watched in horror as Sarah, my coworker, clapped fervently, while her hands became translucent. "Isn't it wonderful, Michael? I'm finally freeing myself from my colonized physical body," she exclaimed, her voice already distant. A memo flashed on our screens. "New corporate policy. Physical existence will be considered a privilege starting next quarter. Employees are encouraged to begin transitioning to non-corporeal states to demonstrate their commitment to equity." Dr. Watson presented the final slide. 2025 goal: 0% physically or dimensionally normative employees. True inclusion is achieved only when we transcend the boundaries of conventional reality. I tried to scream, but my voice was drowned out by enthusiastic applause, both audible and silent. Around me, more colleagues disappeared. Their blissful smiles, the last visible trace before they fully transitioned into abstract concepts of diversity. Dr. Watson concluded with a serene smile. "Remember, questioning this process is a form of discrimination against non-corporeal existences. Resistance to transcendence is the final bastion of physical normative privilege." It was then I realized this wasn't just a diversity program, it was a fundamental transformation of corporate reality itself. And the scariest part, everyone seemed not only to accept but to celebrate their own disappearance in the name of progress. Now, as I write this from my cubicle, I don't know how much longer I'll last. My hands are becoming transparent. Yesterday, Dr. Watson congratulated me on my promotion to corporate representative of Asian American perspectives in decorporeal transition. She called my transformation a revolutionary step in dismantling toxic physical privilege. As I finished typing, I realize I can no longer feel my feet. Dr. Watson says I am freeing myself from the chains of physical existence privilege. My final embodied words will be, resist the dissolution of reality in the name of absolute inclusion. Some boundaries should never be crossed, even if it labels us dimensional conservatives. Note found on Michael Chen's desk. Now, listed in the system as abstract concept 247. Embodied diversity in transition. Pronouns. X. Diversity Tech Solutions is proud to announce that we have achieved 100% representation. There are no longer employees-only perfectly diverse concepts floating harmoniously through the office. We have finally transcended the limitations of binary physical existence, becoming a truly post-human, post-gender, post-racial, and post-reality corporate entity. Final corporate LinkedIn update, posted by an AI identifying as non-binary digital transitioning social network.